Welcome to Uninvited, the show where we cover news that matters to Ontario women. The pandemic has transformed the way students are learning, with the province adopting a hybrid system. It's putting limitations on how students are engaged and supported. More than a month into the new school year, we're hearing from educators on the front lines about the gaps in the system and what needs to be done to make sure that kids don't lose out on a quality education. But first, here's some recent headlines impacting us in Ontario. Canada's first National Day of Reconciliation was on September the 30th. This comes on the heels of the discovery of thousands of unmarked graves at former residential schools across the country. Indigenous leaders and communities have made continued calls for accountability for these unmarked residential school graves. The National Chief of Assembly of First Nations, Roseanne Archibald, said that reconciliation comes from learning about each other and our histories. The more we know about where we come from and our shared history and our responsibilities, the better we can address current challenges and find our healing path forward together. The minimum wage went up early this month by just 10 cents an hour. One of the first things Premier Ford did when he was elected was to repeal the 2019 scheduled wage increase to $15 an hour. On our last program, we spoke with economist Sheila Block, whose analysis at the time showed that low-wage workers would have had $1,500 more in their pockets each year had that wage increase been allowed. This year's wage increase of just 10 cents per hour adds up to only an extra $4 a week, barely enough for a cup of coffee. The province of Ontario also announced that all frontline staff working in long-term care homes will be required to show proof of vaccinations by mid-November. This news is being met with mixed reactions, however, as the province did not extend that vaccine mandate policy to workers in Ontario's hospitals or in the home care sector. The Ontario legislature resumed early this month after Premier Ford spent most of the summer away from Queen's Park. In the government speech from the throne, there was no mention of the word education, childcare, or the environment. Opposition MPPs called those omissions disappointing. Which brings us to what's happening right now in our publicly funded schools. With most students physically back in the classrooms, overcrowding is becoming a serious issue, with teachers and students worried about the difficulty of social distancing. A public school teacher in Keswick, Ontario, painted a disturbing picture while recently talking to CBC News, saying the class sizes are far too large. The kids are unvaccinated and they are right on top of each other. Rather than enforcing a limit on the number of students permitted in each classroom, the province is asking teachers to enforce physical distancing as much as they can. And this can pose a risk to students who are not vaccinated and could also cause potential outbreaks. This is a video that recently went viral. It's posted by Diana Wang Martin, a chemistry teacher here in Ontario. She says the very nature of hybrid learning wastes class time and energy for herself and her students. Diana also went on to say that incident was just one of the countless number of examples of the absurdity of the fractured hybrid model. She's also asking Premier Ford and Minister Lecce why they want to decimate Ontario education. Last month, teachers were joined by parents and students at a rally in Toronto calling for an end to the hybrid simultaneous learning model implemented by the province. It is up to each individual school board to fund virtual learning plans across the province. And because there's less costs associated with virtual learning, it means that many schools jumped on board to implement the system. Educators fear that that system is unsound, limiting, and inequitable, with students across the board missing out on a quality education experience. Today, I'm joined by two guests, Marylinda Lamarra, a secondary CWS teacher in Maple, Ontario. She knows firsthand the challenges that kids and educators are facing. She also says it is time the province properly funds education and puts an end to the less than ideal experience for students. And I'm also joined by Alison Misa, a special ed teacher in York Region. She says that a huge component of what's being lost with the hybrid system is a teacher's ability to engage, observe, or support students like they used to. Marylinda and Alison, thank you so much for joining us on Uninvited today. You're both teachers in the publicly funded education system here in Ontario. Tell us a bit about yourselves and how long you've been teaching.
Thank you. Excited to be here today. I'm in my 26th year of teaching, and I'm in the elementary panel. I work with children with special needs, and I'm also a mom. I have a 13-year-old son.
Hi, my name is Marylinda. I've been teaching for 20 years. I teach in the secondary panel, and I'm a mom of 3.
It's been such a journey the last 18 months, and now we're finally into a new school year where most kids are in the classrooms. What's it been like since the start of the new year? Alison.
It's been a real eye-opener. It's been challenging in ways we didn't expect. But we're really noticing now is the gaps that students are facing with having been sometimes out of the classroom for a couple of years, or reintegrating with their peers, getting off technology back to using books and papers and pencils again.
We didn't get rid of our hybrid learning. So a teacher in the classroom is really split between those who are online and those who are face-to-face. And it's very difficult to keep the attention of both panels because I don't know what they're doing at home. I can't see them. So yes, we went back to normal in the sense that we're in the classroom, but it isn't normal.
Do you feel as though your school has been under-resourced this year?
For those who need Chromebooks, for example, or technology, we've run out. So we do have some of those students who simply don't have the technology if they're going to use it, and I don't have anything to give them. So we're just lacking a lot of the tools that we need to teach.
And how do students deal with that then when there's such an inequity in how resources are distributed?
We're really noticing those who have and those who don't have. And it's not through the fault of the students, it's what they've come with. So the students that had extra support at home, had extra technology at home, had extra spaces to work at home, we're really seeing that they were able to benefit from having 100%. All of those things.
You're with these kids for a big part of their day. How do you feel kids are coping in the classrooms this time around?
I've really noticed the struggle. Definitely there was a struggle last year, but coming back to school this year, we've noticed that we were starting to think about closing academic gaps, but what we're really challenged with is closing the social, emotional, and mental gaps.
We have a schedule where kids are taking 2 courses a day at 2.5 hours, sitting in one classroom. It is extremely difficult to keep their attention and to get them to stay motivated. It's hard for me, and I'm the adult in the room. I can only imagine what they're going through. I have children of my own who say all the time, "Mom, I can't sit on that bench any longer because they're in a science lab." Or, "Mom, the math teacher went on and did 4 lessons today because we got to catch those learning gaps," right? So it's very difficult. You can see them struggling. You really can.
Definitely.
So I guess that leads you to my next question, which is what types of environment do you think would be more suitable or would help kids succeed better at school?
I think definitely funding smaller classrooms would help. Especially with this pandemic, we're at regular class sizes. We're trying to maintain physical distance. We're trying to keep them safe. They have limited movement breaks because of the pandemic. I think really having the smaller class sizes would have helped.
Our classroom sizes are what they were pre-pandemic, and yet they're still sitting in a classroom for 2.5 hours and then having maybe a 10-minute break if you're lucky. My kids come home exhausted.
And so with almost the entire school year ahead of us, what do you need from the government in order to be successful?
True mental health support for teachers and any staff in a building. And really, we've got to catch those gaps for the students, so we need to put investment into closing those gaps, not waiting to see what's going to happen throughout the year. We need to close them now and get them more resources for their mental health, and really just to help them acclimatize again with what life was pre-pandemic, because it's been tough. It's been really tough for them.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm in special education. I've been noticing the gaps increasing for the students who are struggling. We have students who are waiting psychoeducational assessments. We used to have up to 8 a year. The past 2 years, we've gone down to having 1 done a year or 2. So again, in terms of the equity gaps, if parents can't afford to go and invest in this test for themselves, to see exactly how we can best help their students, we can only address 1 or 2 students a year, and I'm at a school of about 800 students. So that's really limiting in terms of how can we support our students best when we don't have the resources and the physical resources available to help them.
And we need to have those rapid testing so these kids can play, because right now they're being restricted to non-contact sports. And so that eliminates the basketball and the volleyball. And this is what high school is about, at least for me. In elementary, it's a little different. It's being part of a team and getting out there, not sitting just in the classroom, getting out there and participating.
You're both parents as well as teachers. Do you think parents should be concerned about what's happening this year and moving forward?
I would hate to think parents aren't concerned about what's happening right now.
Have you heard from parents?
Yes.
And what are they telling you?
We need extra funding. We need to help our kids. We need to make sure that they're safe. It isn't normal in the classroom, and their kid is going to suffer because of it.
Well, it's really disappointing, I think, in the throne speech that education was not even mentioned. We're entering the 3rd year of our pandemic. Students are clearly suffering. I think parents have been at the tail end of trying to cope as best as possible with even the rapid testing kits that were supposed to be available for students that were pulled back because they were only meant for businesses. I don't understand what kind of message this is sending parents and sending students when they are supposed to be our future.
I couldn't agree with her more, and you actually took the words right out of my mouth. Our children are the future, and if we're not investing in them now, what's going to happen in 5 years or 10 years from now? So we need to make sure that the investment, the funding, the resources are put into education as much as the businesses who need it. We need to focus on the education system for our young people, because if it's not there, there's really no hope. The funding has decreased in the last few years, and I know that each school is allotted X amount of sections from their board, and the board gets the money from the government, the Ford government, which has been lacking in the last few years. And courses have been canceled, and the ones that are the electives, that drama class, that art class, that music class, is being shut down because there's just simply no funding for it. And so those kids who have that pathway and want to go and explore that a little further simply can't because there's no option for them. And as a mom, that really frightens me because it's just narrowing down or limiting what my kids are going to be able to take.
We've been hearing from a lot of teachers some of the difficulties around physical distancing. What's been the experience of the kids that you've been teaching at your schools?
It's been a real struggle. So we're supposed to maintain 2 meters distance, and I don't understand why schools have been funded to have as many kids in a class as possible, especially when we're in the midst of a global pandemic.
There is no physical distancing. Our classroom's at 33. Just simply, there isn't enough square feet for us to spread out their desks. So it's a catch-22. Mm-hmm. You know, we have the sanitizer in the room, but that's not any good if we can't keep them apart. And, 5-minute interval between a class isn't enough to disinfect a desk when the next group comes in.
And I think it really set the tone in Ford's throne speech when education was not even addressed.
Yeah. We were left behind. I felt like we were left behind. And
the kids.
And the kids. It's disheartening.
Okay, as we're sitting here with the entire school year ahead of us, do you think that the government has given you the tools to help kids succeed?
Personally, no. I'm feeling, May, June burnout, and we're in the first week of October. I look to my kids, I look to my students, and you just see the fatigue. This is not sustainable. We cannot, at least at the high school level, we cannot sustain this system of 2.5-hour classes. The kids can't do it. They are struggling. The teachers can't do it. We're struggling. So no, they did not give me the tools, or not enough tools at least, to help me through the school year.
Well, when I understood that you were moving to 2.5-hour classes this year, I thought, how is that a sustainable education model? How is that best for students? How is that incorporating brain research and how students learn best? That's more, I think, about the limited budget that the Ford government has given to school boards and what school boards have been forced to do to make it work with the limited resources they have. When we started teaching, we were always told that you're a teacher, social worker, nurse, practitioner, everything. But I feel that through the pandemic, we've almost become a mental health expert, trying to assess the kids.
As we navigate our own.
That's right. Try to keep each other afloat.
Yep, we try.
So let's say the Premier is tuning in, Minister of Education's listening as well. What do you say to them?
I would really say the children are really our future. We're looking to help them in as many ways as possible. Please support publicly funded schools with the resources they need and really put the money into investing in the future of our economy, which are the schools and the students.
I would say they need to turn on their listening ears to be a teacher, but they really need to listen to what's out there, what parents are saying, what teachers are saying, education workers, and what the kids are saying. That's so important. They have made reference that these classes are too long. We need more funding so that they could have those Chromebooks. They want to get back to those extracurricular activities. They need to listen. They need to listen.
Marylinda, Alison, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.
And thank you for watching. This has been Uninvited Working Ontario Women News. Now it's time for a segment that we call I'm Speaking, where you can tell us your views without interruption, without misrepresentation. Head to actwow.ca to record your 60-second message. Now I'm speaking.
I'm speaking.
I have to
I'm
wait.
speaking. I'm speaking.
I have to
I'm
wait.
speaking. If you don't mind letting me finish. I'm speaking.
Hi, my name is Jazz Pitt. I live in Carleton Place, Ontario. I am a home care PSW. I'm living paycheck to paycheck, and I'm attempting to work full-time hours, but it's very hard to when the wages are so low and the rents are so high. For the amount of work that we do, we need to be looked after. And that's all PSWs and all healthcare across the board. We need to have decent wages and full-time work.
My name is Mary. I am a teacher and I live and work in the city of Vaughan. I want to use my voice as a female educator to let my provincial government know that pandemic exhaustion is very real. Female educators are living a more intense life. Working from home has been a complete disaster. I, like many other women, felt like I was failing everyone around me. My family, my children, my students, their parents, and most importantly, myself. I was glued to a screen for endless hours. Many of those hours looking at icons without seeing the faces of my students. The days are long and hard with no breaks, because when I step away from my teacher duties, I immediately step into being a mom to my 3 children. I worry about their well-being. Time escapes me, and I am not nearly as present as I want to be, because I am trying to juggle it all. I feel like being worried, exhausted, and overwhelmed by the challenges we are facing is considered normal in a world of uncertainty with this government. Many of these issues have been around since before COVID. Smaller class sizes, the expanding role of technology, and the changing nature of what teachers are supposed to be doing. Yet, they have never been adequately addressed, and now COVID has really exposed all the cracks, and still nothing has been done. Our government needs to do more. They can provide adequate funding to ensure our kids remain in safe learning environments. I am frustrated with the people in power. Everyone knows that parents and students working from home is definitely not a solution, but it's not too late to do the right thing. Our government can still invest adequate funding in our education system, funding that is needed to keep our kids in school safely, funding for better ventilation, distancing in our classrooms, robust testing and tracing. I want schools open, but I also want them to be safe spaces for all of us. I don't believe any of us ever want to pivot back to online learning. It's not a real solution. The mental health of our students, our educators, our parents, demands that we do better.